Hello and welcome to Brain Says Strange Things. I'm Patrick, this is my brother Jordan, and this is the podcast where we talk about horror movies. And in this episode, we are going to be talking about one of the biggest movies of the past year, really one of the biggest movies of all time, Star Wars Episode VII, The Force Awakens. We are also going to be saying a few words about another film by J.J. Abrams, 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Not directed.
Not directed by J.J. Abrams, thank you. I think of it as a J.J. Abrams film, and I think that's kind of why we're pairing the two together.
Yeah.
But we definitely want to get right into Star Wars, so we're going to talk about that movie up front. So, just a little context. I'm not going to summarize the movie. I can't imagine.
And we're going to spoil it.
Yes,
complete. If you're not spoiled by now.
Complete deep spoilers all the way through. I am not going to summarize the movie because I can't believe that is necessary. Just kind of where we're coming from. I saw the movie when it was in the theaters once, but I haven't seen it since.
You call yourself a fan.
Yeah. And you recently watched it for the first time on home video. So it's a little bit fresher in your mind probably than it is in mine. So hopefully this won't come off completely like me interviewing you. But I think that would be okay too.
I'm sure you remember it.
Yeah, no, I remember it. I remember it well. I'm dying to get into the discussion, but I think before I ask you what you thought of Star Wars, I want to ask you something that I think is important for context, which is, do you consider yourself a Star Wars fan? Like whatever that term means to you.
Yeah.
So going into the movie, you would say you were a Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
You.
Well, I appreciated and enjoyed the original movies. Mm-hmm. Much less so the prequels, of course.
Right.
Like everybody. But...
Right. But I also think you have to be a certain level of fan to even dislike the prequels. Otherwise, you would just ignore them, right?
Right. You engage on it on some level.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I'm a fan. I'm not a typical fan of anything these days,
Right.
I find it really hard to get, really crazily into something. But if you're going to, I think Star Wars is the perfect thing. Yeah. And I always get annoyed when people are so into something for 1 week and then it's out of the theaters the next week and they don't even know what you're talking about the next week.
Right.
Star Wars is one that sticks around and genuinely earns that, I think. I don't get annoyed when people get really crazy about Star Wars.
Sure.
Because I think that's the kind of movie that it is. It is a fan film. It's made for the fans.
Yeah. And for me, I would say I'm sort of a Star Wars fan in that, I had the same reaction to it when I first saw it as a kid as any 11-year-old kid would, in that I freaking loved it. It blew my mind. I was super into it. My fandom was probably at its peak around the time the prequels were coming out or about to come out.
I remember waiting in line.
Yeah. It was the big thing, Star Wars. It has not remained as much a presence in my life though going forward. I have become a fan of things like Star Trek, which I find to be much more rewarding.
I think I've grown up as a fan in general. So
as an adult viewer. But you still find a lot of people have a thing, and you find people who Star Wars is their thing. They're Star Wars guys, and I'm not quite that guy.
What a great distinction!
Yeah, well, no,
Star Wars
but I do have that knowledge of it and affection for it from when I was young, and I revisited the old movies before I saw the new one. So anyway, that's kind of where we're coming from. I do think that's kind of important when you to kind of consider where you're coming from as a viewer.
By today's standards, no, I'm not a fan because I didn't see it 20 times in the theaters. If you watch any movie 20 times in the theaters, you're an idiot.
Well, we may get into all that because I think Star Wars gives us a lot of interesting...
I'm already fired up.
I think this new Star Wars movie gives us a lot of interesting jumping off points to a lot of stuff that Jordan and I talk about outside of the podcast. So, Jordan...
Was it good?
Yeah, we actually have not discussed it yet, so this is really exciting. It's happening on camera. What did you think of Star Wars Episode VII, The Force Awakens?
It was shit.
No!
No, it was really good.
You liked it.
What else can you say about Star Wars?
Right. Well, hopefully a little bit more, because we've only been running for 4 minutes.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the reviews I hear is people say, I think you even said it too, is that it is a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
I think that sells it a little short. I think it uses the elements a little better than the prequels would. Of course it's better than the prequels, but
we can definitely say the internet has been waiting. Star Wars Episode VII better than the prequels.
Stamp of approval. No, I thought it was a really engaging story. I thought it was interesting. I tried to avoid spoilers as much as I could, since I didn't see it in the theaters.
Right. Were you pretty successful?
Yeah.
Were you able to go in pretty fresh?
Yep. And I mean, I did find out some things before I went in, but generally, spoilers don't spoil me.
Sure.
Because I'm not going there for the spoilers. I mean, ideally, I'd like to go in completely fresh, not knowing anything about it, but that never happens. The things you would call spoilers in these movies wasn't really surprising to me.
Yeah.
Because I've seen all this stuff before.
Yeah.
So when Han Solo dies,
right,
I was not surprised
right.
at all.
Well,
not one bit. I'm not saying that as a criticism.
Right.
I'm just saying if you were a Star Wars fan, you would have heard interviews from 30 years ago, Harrison Ford saying Han Solo should have died, and of course he's right. Like it's all about the movie's all about passing the torch.
Right.
Like move on to the next generation, get out of the way.
Right.
He said that for 30 years in interviews.
Right.
Like how could that possibly be surprising?
That's what I meant when I said like,
you could only hope that it would naturally fit into the story, which I think it does.
It did. When I was kind of trying to sort of talk to you about the movie before you had seen it, when I said there's one like surprise moment in this movie, but I described it as it surprises you in exactly the way you expect to be surprised. So even if you didn't guess that it was Han Solo or didn't see that coming specifically, like you're just kind of primed emotionally that there's gonna be a character death. It's gonna have emotional impact. So it's probably gonna be like someone that we've known. You know what I mean? Even if you're not thinking about it, you're kind of like emotionally expect it.
You're ready for it.
And this whole entire movie was built very well by J.J. Abrams to fit those emotional expectations that people had on every single level. Abrams played it very, very safe. Wisely so, in that he did do new things plot-wise, you know, but he did not take a lot of chances with Star Wars. You know, he went with kind of like the sure bets, the best things from the original
series. They took a lot of little chances, I think.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
What are some of the chances you took?
I think with the cast, having
to some extent.
all pretty much unknowns.
Yeah, but that's
that's in the spirit of the original one, as opposed to having Natalie Portman and Ewan McGregor in the prequels. You know.
Yeah.
I like having those characters. Like I like discovering new characters and like, new actors. And I think they were like a perfect mix. The characters are really good.
Yeah, well, let's try to dig into the movie a little bit. So let's talk about the new characters. I should say that I basically really like this movie too. I thought it was, for the most part, it was very good. I completely enjoyed it. I mean, coming as from the perspective of someone who I didn't need Star Wars to be anything other than an entertaining Star Wars movie, and I just don't need that. I'm not that level of fan. I don't need a deeper level of complexity or to be taken for the genre to be taken to new places. You know, I just want a Star Wars movie, and I thought this was one. It was good. Very, very minor, almost not criticisms I have, but we can kind of get into those. But yeah, the characters. So like Finn, you mentioned, a relative unknown, but we actually have praised that actor before in a very good movie called Attack the Block. Yeah. So the actor from that movie played Finn very well in this movie. And then Rey was kind of the other main character.
Rey's kind of the surrogate audience member, I guess.
Yeah,
you know, she actually didn't really have much of a character, I guess. I mean, she's another Luke Skywalker, kind of.
Yeah.
Sort of. But, yeah. Well, I mean, I found Finn really interesting because it was written in that he was like a coward, basically. And that was his character. I mean, I always think, like, when you get cast in a Star Wars movie, everybody wants to be the hero. Everybody wants to be Han Solo.
Well, that's what Carrie Fisher said. She said when she got the script, she and a friend of hers read it, and they both wanted to be Han Solo. You know? So, but yeah, Finn was an interesting role. I like the. I
like his turn that he starts off as a stormtrooper.
Yep.
Instantly, you find out it's his first battle, and he just goes completely the other direction. I think that's a cool character to have with as they go along. And he thinks he knows way more than he really does. I don't know. I liked his character a lot.
Yeah, and just the actors really did a great job.
The actor
with
brought
those
it through,
characters. And these are not like emotionally complex characters or realistically, drawn characters in terms of their psychology. Nor should they be.
That's what I always think. I always think it's so funny when people talk about how Han Solo is like the greatest character an actor could play.
He's a cardboard cutout.
Han Solo is a good character, but he's like he's designed to be a non-character.
Well, this is where I think discussing Star Wars can take us off on a lot of different tangents, because this is like, I find myself saying this more and more and more as time goes by, in that people confuse complexity and realism for quality, right? So that if you make a film that is an homage or in a different style, you use character types rather than realistically drawn character, it's seen as somehow lesser. But it's not. It's a deliberate storytelling choice. Right. It's one that George Lucas made years ago.
He built that into the original. And
yep, when Star Wars was made as an homage to the great old movie serials. These are character types. There's nothing complex or realistic about Luke Skywalker. Now, the emotional impact that watching Luke Skywalker and Leia and Han Solo when you're a kid has on you is big. Yeah, so
you can identify with it.
And if you don't want to let go of that as an adult, you build and imagine all of this complex stuff into those characters, but it's not necessarily there.
That's because you're identifying with it, and then you're putting yourself in there. Like,
right.
Oh, I would do exactly what Rey's doing in that situation, right?
Well, and also I think just to justify your own love of these characters, like, it's okay to love Luke Skywalker when you're a little kid, but if you keep loving Luke Skywalker or Han Solo as an adult, it's got to be because, like, well, he's not really just a rogue bounty hunter. There's a complex story about this. I mean, there's books written, philosophy of Star Wars. I'm not necessarily saying that's all bullshit, but I am saying, like, you should not confuse complexity with quality, and it's okay to have character types. But it also shows, like, how much of a challenge J.J. Abrams had with this movie, because when you make a sequel to Star Wars, you are not making a sequel to Star Wars. You're making a sequel to everyone's memory of how Star Wars made them feel when they were a kid. And that is a near impossible task.
I almost think that's his forte. Like,
it is. Yeah, well, that's why when he was announced as a director for this, I was like, that is a perfect choice. And it was a challenge that he basically met and pretty much at least matched, if not exceeded, on every level. And that's really what Star Wars should be,
I mean, you hear marketing campaigns about it. And, like, normally that would bug me, but Star Wars needs marketing campaigns. It was built around the market.
We've said before, Star Wars was a machine that was built to do this. So a lot of stuff that I think bothers us, you and I, about other franchises, right, and that it's always a part of a larger whole. The movie's always got to tie into other things. The merchandising, the speculation is all part of the experience. Often that works to the film's detriment. Star Wars was built to do that. In fact, Star Wars kind of started all that years ago. So, like, Star Wars has now kind of created the perfect environment for itself. Like, George Lucas kind of dropped these movies back in the late 70s, going into the early 80s. The industry changed around them, and now it's ready. It's primed itself for a new Star Wars movie.
I heard the interview with J.J. Abrams. I think a Howard Stern interview where he was talking about how George Lucas wanted to make Flash Gordon. Couldn't get the rights to it, so he turned it into Star Wars.
Right.
And so Star Wars, the original 1977,
I want to say.
Something like
We're going to get some comments if that's not right.
That came out like the same amount of time after the Old Republic serials that he remembered from his childhood. And now the same amount of time has gone past again. Like, almost like exactly the same amount of time for it to, like, refresh and perfectly time it again. So you're right. Like, this is like a perfectly timed incident.
So now people have nostalgia for Star Wars in the way
they did with the Old Republic
and the way that George Lucas did the old movie series.
Like, with someone who likes the Force Awakens, would they even watch an Old Republic serial? They wouldn't even understand it or care. Like, this is kind of a way to bring it into the next generation. And it's perfectly timed.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that is why I do say, like, it's a Star Wars movie, right? Because like the old Star Wars were about
it doesn't seem as bad when they're like it doesn't seem like it's pushing a product, you know, a toy line,
right?
Even though it is, you know, it's like that's kind of a given already.
Yeah, because
like, part of the fun is like seeing all the new characters' designs.
Right.
I thought that was cool when it was coming out. That's what made me feel like a Star Wars fan.
Right.
As soon as I heard it was coming out, I'm like, wow, like I wonder what the new designs and the new ships and
it's
the
like Star Wars is kind of the one place in movies where if that kind of thing is ever appropriate, it's appropriate in Star Wars. Because again, Star Wars was built to do that because there's no complex, nuanced, grown-up text sitting behind it all. It's all just a fun romp. I mean, and I feel like some Star Wars fans might get insulted by that, but I don't mean it as an insult. There's just not that much to Star Wars. And I say
they know that though too. Part of the reason I like the original Star Wars and this one too is that it's a huge group effort. Like it's It's like the top of the line in all these different fields. Like the writer from the original, from Empire Strikes Back, brought back. He's got a lot of great writing credits. Like he's not just a Star Wars writer. Industrial Light and Magic is the top of the food chain in terms of special effects. They're doing everything. They have the top designers, like designing everything. Like they're using
like the
these
ultimate movie.
Yeah,
it's like the ultimate movie.
Well, it's like, who cares about what the... Like, that's almost how I feel. Like, who cares what the spoilers are? The stories...
Well...
I hate to say it because I like Star Wars, but the story's not that great.
Well, but like, this gets to another thing that I find myself getting in debates with people again and again, is that spoilers are about plot. And plot is only one part of a movie. And it's kind of the least interesting thing about a lot of movies. It's certainly the least interesting thing about Star Wars. Like... who gives a shit what happens in this movie?
Well, recently now, spoilers and plot points are all who dies. Who's the character that's going to die? What's a plot twist that you saw in the last 10 years of a movie that wasn't what character died?
So they had to have that in this movie. They had to build it in. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I like that part. I like how it's all about passing the torch. They do it so many times, and there's so many different things going on. You could tell, like, JJ is putting everything in, like, to every single scene, kind of like David Fincher almost. Like, paying really close attention to every detail. Yeah. When Poe's handing off his jacket to Finn. Yeah. When there's a scene when Finn gives his jacket to Rey later on. Like, you can tell, like, this is a way of, like, passing the torch in a literal sense almost.
Yeah, and again, these are very basic, broad kind of storytelling points.
It wouldn't work in other movies.
Yeah, but that's the level that Star Wars should be operating on. This kind of mythic story for all ages. And, I totally agree with you.
Well, part of the reason why I like the cast is because I think they get it. I think Harrison Ford understands exactly what he's doing.
Harrison Ford knows exactly what he's doing.
He was like the best part of this movie.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
I'm going to say something sacrilegious to Star Wars fans, but I like the fact that he got killed.
Oh, okay.
Like, I think that's like that's a part of his character. Now, he'll probably reappear in the sequel as a ghost or whatever.
Maybe there was carbonate down at the end of that pit that he fell down.
Possibly. He's still in one piece.
Yeah.
No, you can just tell when characters are having fun. Like, these two, like, I think that's why they cast these two unknown people, because it was like a perfect fit again. Like, we're gonna cast these people in a Star Wars movie, like they're gonna be fucking excited about it, you know. And it comes across on screen. Yeah, the scenes with Finn and Han just like pop off the screen. They're just like electric.
Yeah, yeah. You really like this movie?
I like a lot of it.
Yeah.
I'm comparing it to a lot of the stuff. See, this is why it's hard to compare it nowadays, because the exact same level of excitement is applied to every single movie.
Right.
So when something is actually good, then it's like,
how do you convey
how do I compare that to everything else? Like, how does this compare to Deadpool? People were
which the weekend that came out is the greatest movie of all time. Right.
Because it's Deadpool.
Or Batman vs Superman is the worst piece of shit of all time. You know, it's everything is. See, I told you this would give us a lot of jumping off points to talk about some of our little pet peeves, but
a lot of ranting and raving.
Yep, and this is
no, but that's how it goes. Like, it turns over so quickly.
That's because not only has pop culture evolved so much that the things that nerds like have become mainstream, but also nerds' way of liking things has become mainstreamed. And how do nerds like them?
Completely obsessive.
In the way of the comic book guy. Best movie ever, worst movie ever, best. That used to be a parody, right? Like, guys, the comic book guy on The Simpsons is supposed to be funny. This is how people actually talk. Not nerds anymore. People talk about movies in these broad strokes. So you're right, when you do see a movie that you did love more than just about, you know, a lot of recent movies, how do you convey the excitement of that and differentiate that from the movie that was the best thing ever from the previous weekend?
It's so funny. Like, I do this, like, I watched Star Wars just recently, and people are like, are you crazy? Like,
right.
Like, I know a lot more about Star Wars than half the people that went to go see the movie, but I waited for it because I put it in perspective. I'm like, I like the movies, but I also like other movies too.
Right,
you know, like, it's not... Every single thing that comes out each weekend is not at the top of my list every time.
Right.
Like, it has to have some sort of staying power.
Right.
Like, I think Star Wars definitely does because it's designed to do so. It's designed to be, like we said, like paper thin almost.
Right.
Like, you can describe the plot simply.
Well, Roger Ebert's got that great quote about, you know, camping out to see movies. And he says that,
in that book,
you know, wonderful quote where he says, people who camp out on sidewalks to see movies are more interested in camping and sidewalks than they are in movies. Yeah. And I think that speaks to this, you've got to see it opening weekend. Not necessarily because you're just so excited to see the movie, but because you want to participate in the cultural event that's happening, right? That's only going to happen opening weekend, right? Like, if you don't participate in that, all you're left with is the film.
Well, it's built that way too because that's the way the industry works too. Is the movie successful? If it hits a certain mark on the 2 days that it opens,
right,
it's successful.
If not,
if it doesn't, it's a failure.
Yep.
Move on next week.
Right.
Is this movie successful? It's like, if you actually wait a week to watch a movie, or like in this case, I did a few months, like you get actually a clear perspective.
Right. Yeah. You can kind of
like you can understand the movie better than the people that see it. I don't understand people going to see movies multiple times in the theaters. I could see
a bold statement.
I could.
No, it is though, because that's not how fans. Like, if you're a fan, if you love Star, like you, I know a lot of people who didn't love Star Wars who saw it multiple times. I know people who hated it who saw it multiple times.
There's that Onion headline too, where it's like,
oh yeah,
area man who saw Star Wars 20 times thinks it's okay.
Right,
you know,
right.
Why are you seeing this?
Or like people who were just dogging Ben Affleck for Batman's just opened the weekend before a few weekends before we recorded this. Dogging Ben Affleck for being in Batman vs. Superman. This movie's going to be terrible. Oh, look at how awful that trailer looks. Do you think there's any chance they weren't going to be there opening weekend? They were there. They hated it, but they were there.
They're too big to fail.
Are they going to be there for the next one? Absolutely they are. This is this weird pop cultural phenomenon. So.
Well, it speaks to the quality of the movies. Like, I don't want to be like a hater of these movies. I always think, because this is a quote from Tarantino that I believe is true, that he's not like a Hollywood basher because enough things come out of there to justify its existence. Like, it exists for a purpose. Like, most of it is not good, I'll say.
Sure, but that's most of anything is shit.
And I'm saying this as like a harsh critic, but I think, what's wrong with being a harsh critic? You should be. You should require more of things.
Right.
And a lot of people say, like, well, why don't you make a movie? I'm like, well, I think that's the approach. Because I think a lot of people come out and say, well, you know, the Fantastic Four was the worst. You know, it's just like fill in the blank movie from last week that came out is the worst. But, like, it can't possibly be at that level of bad. And, like, I hate these two categories that everything gets lumped into.
Well, that's what we're here for, to provide the nuance. All right, let's try to,
by saying that Star Wars is great.
Let's try to rein it back into Star Wars a little bit if we can, and continue with talking about the characters. Is there anything to be said about the fact that they put minority characters kind of front and center, a woman and a black man as the two leads? Is this something that Star Wars has kind of always been on the front lines of? Is this significance.
The front lines of putting minorities in leads.
Well, I think of like Princess Leia as being kind of
I guess, but
a character that breaks out of the typical damsel in distress mode, and Rey seems to me a logical extension of that.
Yes, I agree with that. I don't know, the fact that he's a black character, I think, is a non-issue. I don't think they really even thought about it.
Oh, I think they did.
I don't know. I would hope to. Well, maybe you're right.
But I think it's important, and I think it's good that they did. Right? Like I think movie heroes should like reflect what the world looks like, right? And as the internet gives rise to everyone having a voice, and we learn more about other groups of people. I do think it's not to get too heavy-handed or make too much of it, because certainly they don't make a point of it in the movie. But I do think it's significant that we have an active girl hero Jedi, and a black man as the other lead. I mean, these are our two leads. I think that's significant.
Yep, they're not romantic characters either.
And this is one of the most financially successful movies of all time.
Yeah, I can't remember. There was some interview I was listening to before, and like a lot has been talked about that, but. You can't have your villain nowadays be a black character.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's crazy.
Right, but I remember that's been the case. I remember like a lot, that's been the case for a long time. At least in like, I know like in kids' cartoons and stuff, like a lot of times if they'd adapt like a comic book I was reading into like a cartoon, they'd like, if it was a villain, they'd change him from like black to white. It's like, why'd they do that? And you find out it's because like, well, we don't want to give like, yeah, that's a whole nother weird issue. But, well, what about some of the other characters in the movie? Like, what about the villain, Kylo Ren?
I thought he was a great villain.
I liked him a lot. I liked him a lot. First of all, he looked fucking awesome. And when his character was kind of revealed, I thought it was a great choice to make him this kind of like disillusioned, young brat. There you go. Yeah. That's the word. Because I thought of like the kinds of people who might become recruited into like...
He's kind of like a Star Wars fan.
Well, in some ways, but I also thought of people who are like maybe like vulnerable in terms of being recruited into like terrorist organizations and stuff like that. It's like, I mean, I didn't read that. Again, not to make it like too serious, but like he's that type, you know. He's angry, he's wounded, he's got some serious.
But see, it's that type of stock character that you can apply all those ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. But I like that. I thought that was a good choice, rather than just making him, because he looks like a badass, and like with Darth Maul, like his image was kind of the primary image used to sell this film. Like he was on like all the stuff, and he just looked really cool. But I think like, rather than actually making him like be like as cool and badass as he looked, to make him this clearly kind of wounded, very young character who at least is on some level sort of struggling with what he's doing, was a really interesting and affecting choice. I thought that was great.
Yeah, and I like the fact that they actually say he's Han Solo's son fairly early on.
Right.
It's like, it doesn't all hinge on that. I mean, once they said that, then I knew he was going to kill him. But,
right.
Because it follows those lines, but it's supposed to do that. Right, you know, it's like, it's kind of like, well, I mean, I was asking you before, because you saw it, if it's like, I was thinking maybe J.J. Abrams would take this opportunity and make some weird type of movie.
And I said that he did not.
He said that he didn't really do that.
Way.
And he couldn't, like...
No.
And I don't think he did, but...
And I've heard people say, like...
I just... Personally, that would be a little more interesting to go to a movie
would
and be
be,
surprised,
but he's never...
But the fans would hate it.
Fans would hate it. Fans think that... Here's the thing. Fans think that's what they want, right?
Fans think they know what they want.
Fans think, I want to see something I've never seen before, show me something different, do something new with characters. They don't want that. No. They want the same thing. And J.J. Abrams is smart enough to know that.
He's smart enough to put enough in there and have enough new things to kind of... meld it together.
Yeah, and I thought he did a good job. So that's like another thing about the characters is like you said, Rey is kind of like the new Luke Skywalker, and she kind of is, but you can't really draw a 1-to-1 ratio with any of the characters, the classic characters. Like, well, this character has kind of aspects of Han Solo, but it doesn't add up 1-to-1. You know, like these characters are. They're types, and the original characters from the trilogy were types. So, of course, they kind of fulfill those certain roles, but they're also different. They're kind of their own thing, too.
Well, they flesh it out with their dialogue and stuff like that. So they make them a little more interesting.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to say about, like, the plot, like, the story, is that I think J.J. Abrams is really smart about writing really dumb stories. And by that I mean, like, I shouldn't say dumb.
Well, it kind of goes back to the marketing thing of it too.
But I mean like these kind of broad adventures, right? Like not realistically drawn portrayals of serious characters. These kind of big, broad adventures, like Star Wars is. It's like deceptively smartly structured and smartly written. Like he makes a lot of really smart choices here. Like I think one of the best things that he did in this movie was the way in which Han Solo and Princess Leia are portrayed, because like you've got this challenge I'm sure J. Abrams was involved in the writers with in the writing with probably some of his other crew.
Yeah, the screenplay by him. It's co-written.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Good. so like you know, you've got a challenge as a writer, and your challenge is at the end of Return of the Jedi, Han Solo and Princess Leia have fallen in love and live happily ever after. Now we're making a new Star Wars movie. Everyone wants to see Han Solo and Princess Leia. We don't want to see them at home living happily ever after. But we've got to acknowledge that that happened and honor that. How do we do that? And he comes up with the solution of, okay, between the two movies, they got together, lived happily ever after, had a son, and then something really, really bad happens. And to deal with that trauma, and they say this in the movie, they each reverted to
their old ways,
which is a thing that people do. So we get the payoff from the end of Jedi, but we also get to see Leia being Leia, leading the rebels, and we get to see Han being Han, going on smuggling runs with Chewbacca. That is a really smart storytelling solution.
Yep.
Yeah.
You have your cake and eat it too.
Absolutely. And I think this movie tried to do that as much as possible. You know, it's like, let me try to do something new without, you know, alienating any of the audience.
JJ is good at doing that stuff. That's what really good directors are. And that's why the culture of movies I don't like that much, because it's the fans are too involved. Yeah. Like this episode is like all bashing fans, I guess, quote unquote.
I think that's okay. I think the fans can take it.
It used to be where like an artist will create something. JJ makes a movie. And I get it. He's making it to nod and wink to the fans because it is a sequel.
It is a sequel.
Like a retro sequel, basically. So it's almost like the same movie over and over again. But the minute the fans get involved, it just gets too convoluted, and everybody needs to please everybody.
And when you say fans get involved, you're talking about a very real thing that happens, because like
actually getting
fan
involved.
Chatter on the internet has like gained a level of power over the studios that it should not have. So that if
the majority of them don't know anything about movies, and like they don't have to know. Well, they could just be fans.
Well, here's the thing: like everyone knows emotionally how a movie makes them feel. Like you see something, you see a trailer, you see an image, it creates an emotional response. But most people are not capable of analyzing what about that image, what about that trailer, what about that film is causing them to have that emotional response. They usually think it's plot, because that's the easiest thing to talk about. But that is not really the job of fans. That's the job of filmmakers and critics. And what happens is fans will react negatively to these images and these trailers that are thrown out online, and the studios will actually fucking listen, right? They'll like, or at least they'll listen enough so the fans think that they're gearing their movies towards them, but it still puts enough stuff into these movies that it's fucking ruining these movies. You know, it becomes all fan service.
Well, I don't have any hard data to prove it, but I've seen a lot of the internet, and you know, like the movies will release a photo of what one of their characters will look like. This happened with X-Men, new X-Men movie. They'll release, and also with Suicide Squad.
Okay.
They'll release a photo of one of the characters from it. Wait for the fan reaction.
Yeah, and which is why they release it.
And the fans are like, "Whoa, you went way too far with this." And then you see the next time some sort of art comes out, some sort of like production art comes out of it, and it looks different.
Right.
They actually took the fans into consideration.
Right.
As opposed to just like where I started with J.J. Abrams, you just make decisive decisions like, this is what's going to happen. Our killer, like our villain is going to be Kylo Ren. He is Han Solo's son. That's it. That's a movie we're making like right now. Like I feel like that went on with this movie a lot. I feel like it's like a direct decision that JJ made, and It has to be, because you probably had to make like a million decisions.
But don't you think he played it pretty safe? I mean, it's not like he did anything that really had a chance.
I don't really know what I was expecting.
Yeah, it's not like he put anything in there, I think, that really had a chance of even slightly alienating any Star Wars fans. I mean, okay, Han Solo had a son. Someone turned to the dark side. I mean, this is Star Wars, you know. This is
but I like it. It seems more. I don't know. It seems more genuine to me.
Yeah.
When I
well, I think J.J. Abrams genuinely loves Star Wars, so you're probably right that's true. Yeah. All right. Well, what else? I don't want to miss anything. Is there anything else we want to say about Star Wars before we say a little bit about 10 Cloverfield Lane? And start yelling at that movie's fans.
I know one thing about Star Wars that I really like.
Okay, the new Star Wars.
Because this is actually the first time I've watched it on Blu-ray. Because I realized that I don't own the original trilogy on Blu-ray, and I haven't seen them in a while. So this is the first time I've seen it really clear. Did
you watch a DVD upgrade? You watch a DVD on a Blu-ray player, or what?
No, I watched a Blu-ray of it.
Oh, okay, right
on. But like all the details, he like took it up another level. Like they're actually, I don't know, it doesn't feel, I hate to keep comparing it to the prequels, but it's kind of like a good example of like a good and bad example, like how it's done. And he brought it back to the original idea of it. Like if you look at all the Ralph McQuarrie sketches, where it's the little figure against the giant landscape.
Yeah.
They take it up a level, and you know they're specifically doing that because there's another, not a Death Star. Remember, they originally think it's a moon. Yeah. That's no moon. It's a spaceship or space station, whatever. And this one, it's a planet. So like they're going up in scale.
Big deal. It's bigger.
And they call it out. I don't know. There's so many scenes like that where it's like the little characters against the huge like landscapes, and I don't know. It makes it look like a space opera. Is what I don't know. That was my favorite part of it.
That's great. I love that your favorite part was something that has to do with the visual way that the story was told, rather than a plot point.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and my other favorite part, I like Poe's character. You know, it seemed like at the intro scene is really good, where he's captured first, and that was really cool. When this is a way to like show your characters really simply what's going on when he's shooting at the stormtroopers who are invading this camp that he's at, and Kylo Ren shows up, and then he's about to because he can hit every one of the stormtroopers. He's like a marksman, and then he aims at Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren stops the blast in like the middle of the air, and it's like just floating there. And then he freezes him, and then he freezes Poe, and the stormtroopers walk him past the laser, and he like the look on his face. I don't know. He's like looking at the laser, like what the fuck? Like it's like floating in midair. Like you can tell, like this is a point in the movie when this character is realizing, like, holy shit, there's something called the Force. Yeah. And now, like, I'm used to blasters, and now I got to deal with this as a game changer.
Yeah, now I've stumbled upon a world that's bigger than I am, just like Luke Skywalker in the first Star Wars.
I don't know, I just love that scene. I love to look at his, because he's really good in that movie. Oscar Isaac. Yep. Yeah. He just look on his face.
Who's a bit unsung. I feel like people don't talk about Poe as much.
Yeah, I think that was part of an issue with the writing, because I know his character was supposed to die.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The fans didn't like that.
I don't know what their end decision was.
Interesting.
But then they had to bring him back for the end.
Yeah.
And that ending I didn't like either, really.
Okay. Well, first let's get into the ending. But before we talk about the ending, I want to say that the scene where he stopped the laser blast was one of my favorite scenes too. Because when it was suspended in midair like that, it looked to me like a lens flare. And I thought it was pretty brilliant that in a J.J. Abrams movie, one of the weapons was a lens flare. So I thought it was like, oh, he can kill people with lens flares. I was like, I see what you did there, J.J. So I appreciated that too, because I like the lens flares in Star Trek. God damn it!
I just love how many things can be summed up in that one like little.
This is what I mean about a smartly written. I shouldn't say dumb, but dumb story, like a simple story. It's deceptively, complex, the structure of it, but like the plot is simple.
It's a simple structure that the people using it perfectly understand. Yeah. Like these simple structures are used all the time
right.
by morons that have no idea what they're doing.
Right.
Like they're just juggling.
Well, and it also shows that storytelling is more than plot. Like plot, people confuse plot and storytelling, but like the plot is just the stuff that happens. It's interesting. It's cool. There can be neat ideas. But storytelling is the way that the film is constructed, the way that it conveys information. Choices made about what you see, what you don't see, and when. Music, etc. This all sounds basic, but it's, again, the lowering of discourse about film into this kind of fanish language has really, I think, diluted people's ability to understand these more complex elements of film.
Mm-hmm. That's one of my favorite Mystery Science Theater jokes, where they say, they're asking about if a fan liked the movie, and he goes, well, I like the plot, it was just too long.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
It just shows that they have no idea what they're doing.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's talk about the ending, and maybe some of the plot points in the ending, but you said you didn't completely like the ending? Remind me how it ends. The good guys win? Yes?
Yeah, well, I guess where it was all kind of, the retro nature of it was coming through so quickly. When they're putting together their plan, they're standing around the plans.
The great putting together your plan scene.
That's just kind of what it felt like to me. I don't know. I didn't really get anything out of that scene. Like, I didn't feel like we're going to war here. Mm-hmm. I just felt like it's another Star Wars scene.
Yeah, it's funny you say that.
The planets they traveled to weren't diversified enough.
Okay. And they very much were in the original series.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the original Star Wars, it was very obvious, like, where you were.
It's just like, if this is a completely made-up story about space and magic, like, why not take full advantage of those facts, Mm-hmm. I feel like it's clung a little too tightly to that model.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Of A New Hope.
It could have gone at even visually more interesting, if anything. Yeah, I agree with that.
So that part of the ending, I'm not talking about like when Rey is fighting with Kylo Ren at the end. I like that part of it. I like the fact that they're actually like, it's hard to hold these lightsabers. Like, it's like George Lucas's original idea. Again, like if you go back to interviews from 30 years ago, he was saying this. He's like, you can't hold it with one hand. It's heavy. Like it's like Excalibur. Like, and that's what it seemed like in these movies.
Yeah.
As opposed to, again, the prequels where they're like flipping around with the sword, like it's nothing.
Right.
I don't know. I just feel like JJ like went back to the source material and got it.
And I do think the one place where I think this is a very good movie, but only time will tell if it's going to be a classic in the way that the original Star Wars trilogy is. But I would say that I think one place J.J. Abrams pretty inarguably does George Lucas one better is in character and dialogue. So you get basically what feels like a George Lucas movie with like good dialogue and funny characters and charisma between actors in a way that George Lucas is just kind of famously not very good at bringing out, Well,
I had a friend when the original, the prequels came out, and he said like one of the reasons why he thinks it didn't work that well, despite all its flaws, was that when the original came out, it's an homage to all the Republic serials. Right. So even the dialogue is designed to
be that's what I mean.
Simple like that. I've got a bad feeling about this as like a line from that. And then they try to do that same type of dialogue in an updated movie where the special effects look like they're state of the art now.
Streamlined.
It throws it off. It seems weird. And now it's like the special effects are, I mean, it's still CG, but a lot of it is a throwback. There's a lot of practical.
Yeah, there's a lot of practical effects,
and it's come around again.
Yes, that's what I mean. We've come around. Now
you can use smart dialogue.
Now we can do anything. We can put anything on screen. Anybody can look at a commercial on TV. That was like The Matrix, 20 years ago. But the best directors know that they don't have to do everything, and they can choose to use practical effects. And yeah, the whole look and feel of this movie was great. The practical effects were great.
And the fact that I found out that BB-8 was a puppet, I was like, holy shit, I had no idea. It's
and when do you ever feel like that in movies? Like,
yeah.
how did they do that? You know what I mean? I like BB. He's the new character we didn't mention, too. That's also a pretty impressive feat, that these iconic characters, C-3PO and R2-D2, you were actually able to make a third member that kind of fits into that group.
Yes.
Pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, God, I really like talking to you about Star Wars. Okay, how about... So this movie, most people really liked it. It seemed to be kind of critical.
But again, how can you tell?
Well, yeah. Well, let me ask you this, though, because I feel like the movie's been around long enough. Do you think we... Like, what are some... Like, have you heard, like, criticism, like, common criticisms of it that we can maybe kind of address in, like, what have you heard, like, people say, like, against it that you think they may be right about or maybe wrong about?
The worst thing that I heard about them.
Yeah, I haven't heard too much.
I think the biggest thing I can think of in this moment now is that it's the retro throwback. Kind of what I was saying is that it is.
Yeah,
it follows the model a little too close.
That's if I heard any criticism of it, that's what I heard of it. It's just like, okay, this is just a rehash of A New Hope and that kind of thing. Which,
and I've heard people like the characters are kind of shallow, but I mean, like, you really don't know what you're talking about at that point because it's designed to be like that.
Get those people out of the conversation. So, yeah. That's ridiculous. Those people don't understand.
There really haven't been a lot of major criticisms.
Yeah, I think that's probably the one that that's really kind of the only thing I could think that people might not like about the movie is that it is kind of a retread of like what they had already done, and I guess maybe plot wise they maybe could have come up with something other than a bigger Death Star. I guess, you know, but for my money they did enough kind of tweaks to the classic formula, and I don't think J.J. Abrams really had any choice but to offer people pretty much exactly what they were expecting. I think that was his job. I think that's what he was hired by Disney to do. I think he did it very well. I think he made a hugely entertaining movie. And if you don't think so, you probably take Star Wars a little bit too seriously and are probably projecting a complexity onto the original series that probably wasn't really there to begin with. And in that sense, J.J. Abrams just kind of reminds us of the kind of innocent wonder of those first movies. I've heard people say that, okay, this one was simple, but like in the sequels, he'll do all this weird like new stuff. And I'm like, guys, I don't think he's going to. I think he's going to continue to play pretty close bone. I do think in some of these spin-off movies, I guess they're going to do like Rogue One and like these other movies that exist in the Star Wars universe. I think if anywhere, that is where Star Wars fans will see new, diversity, weird, complex stuff. The Star Wars numbered episodes are going to be pretty much what they've been, what you expect. That's what I want out of Star Wars.
Well, when I hear like Rogue One is coming out and people are just going like ballistic,
I'm
like
not.
It's amazing. Like this is the greatest,
the best thing ever,
the greatest thing ever.
The
next greatest thing ever.
Well, there's got to be a greatest thing every year, every couple of years at least. They got to keep the pump prime.
Every year, it's like every week or every month. Like it's crazy.
But even with Star Wars, like, isn't 3 new Star Wars movies enough? Like now we have to have like movies between those movies
them to bridge the gap.
You know?
That, I mean, I can't think of another criticism that I heard, but I remembered one criticism that I have is that it did seem like a little too much of a bridge movie.
Oh,
like,
did you think
like
so?
Trying to build the franchise is built already.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to rebuild Star Wars.
Yeah. But again, that bothers me less in Star Wars than it does in other things.
Yes, because in perspective, it does bother me less in other movies. That was built
into the DNA of Star Wars, right? Like the first Star Wars movie is Episode 4. It's an homage to these movie serials, which are continuing stories or multiple episodes that require you to return to the theater multiple times. That's in the DNA of Star Wars, you know? So, like, again, Star Wars is kind of the one place in movies where I think it's okay to do that. You know, it bugs me in other movies, like when it's like, oh, this scene is just there because they have to set up the next movie. It's the only reason for the scene. I hate that. But in Star Wars, I'm like, it's okay. But I actually didn't really think there was a lot of that in Star Wars. I thought it stood on its own pretty well.
I don't know. I think maybe I thought the being retro was kind of the way of doing it. Because I don't think... It's almost like you have to say... It's trying to be two things at once. It's trying to be the old movies and it's trying to be a new movie at the same time.
Yeah, sure, it was, yeah.
Maybe it didn't work in that case for me. Like, I'm saying it didn't work even though I liked the movie. But, I mean, that particular aspect of it, I guess. I don't know.
Well, it didn't work well enough for me to be excited about Rogue One. Right?
No, I don't get it.
I'm like, 9 Star Wars movies, that is going to fill the Star Wars hole in my heart. I don't need anything else. I don't need to watch the series. I'm good. I just want there to be. Really, I prefer that.
I want to say, like, I'm just like, I've moved on. I'm another generation that just doesn't get it. But I know people that are older than me that are just like fucking 12-year-olds.
Well,
like, it's ridiculous.
Hollywood has figured out how to use
I'm saying
nerds.
This as an immature person. So
Hollywood has figured out how to use nerds. It used to be that when Hollywood adapted something nerds would like, they would change it and the nerds would attack the film.
And now producers are like, whoa, we're not doing that again.
They're not, but they saw, like, look at that passionate fan base. How can we use that to direct it outward at the critics of the movie? So now they put all this little fan servicey stuff. When they adapt a comic book, they tell their actors, say you've always been reading comics your whole life, get the fans on their side. So now one says, like, hey, that movie kind of sucked. Now the fans attack the critics rather than attacking the movies. Hollywood has cracked this formula, and J.J. Abrams is the master puppeteer. And I say that with respect and admiration. He's doing a great job.
I just heard the other day about Will Smith wanting to be
in
the new Batman movie.
I'm
like, well, since when do the actors get to make... This is like another thing. Like, even the actors are getting involved. Like, how about we let the actors act and the director direct? And, like, why are actors campaigning to be... Why is Tyrese campaigning to be Green Lantern? Well, number one, he's doing it because it works sometimes. Because Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool. I mean...
Right.
It's just... It just feels like completely not genuine at all in these movies.
Yeah, it's very cynical. There's a very cynical machine behind a lot of these.
Like I said, it's like
and I think there's a pretty cynical machine behind Star Wars, but J.J. Abrams, as a fan himself, and as someone who is very good at operating in the current pop culture landscape, was able to bring out what was great about Star Wars, use Disney's funding to do so, and made a really, really entertaining Star Wars movie. Enough said?
Yes.
All right, so there
Until
you go.
Rogue One.
That is we are not going to see or talk about Rogue One. That is our take on Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. We hope you enjoyed it. People who aren't interested in listening to us for an hour can turn it off now. But we do want to have a brief discussion of another film J.J. Abrams was involved in as a producer. And that is 10 Cloverfield Lane. The sequel? Follow-up?
Doesn't matter.
Has nothing to do with the original Cloverfield film from quite a few years ago. This is kind of a neat little movie.
Blood relative is the
and this movie, we are going to discuss the highly controversial ending. So again, spoilers ahoy. But this is essentially what I would describe as a prepper horror movie. So John Goodman does a brilliant job portraying this guy who has one of these kind of disaster preparedness guys. You know, he's spent his life preparing for
survivalist,
the big one, survivalist, and he has this underground bunker. And
he's like Tim Robbins in that War of the Worlds movie.
Yeah, and this main character, this young woman who is just in the process of breaking up her boyfriend, is involved in a car accident at the beginning, knocked unconscious, wakes up in John Goodman's bunker, and is basically informed that the apocalypse has happened. There's another young man down there in a similar situation, and at first she sort of has to take John Goodman's word for it. The film really keeps you on edge. Is he telling the truth or not? Does he have ulterior motives? Is he good? Is he bad? Really keeps you on a knife edge, kind of Hitchcockian suspense. Very well constructed film. What do you want to say about 10 Cloverfield Lane?
I thought it was the best movie I've seen in the theaters in a long time, actually.
All right.
So take that for what it is.
Agreed.
I mean, I enjoy it on the same level as I enjoyed Star Wars. I think it like reaches that level.
So you're saying it's better than Star Wars is what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying it's better. That's like a crazy argument to make because there's like comparing apples and oranges.
Yeah. I just want to generate some controversy. Jordan says better than Star Wars. I want that to appear on the DVD box somewhere.
People think I hate everything.
Yeah, they do.
No, I think like if you judge it by what it's trying to do, I think it's perfect. And the fucking controversial ending is an ending. It's like I was saying, it's the choice that they made. And I was actually doing a little research on this because you didn't know how it was put together. Remember you thought that it was that they kind of threw that in afterwards, after the movie was made, to kind of tie it in.
I thought they might have, to an extent. I thought they might have had this. So basically, the ending of this movie is yes, the apocalypse has happened, or is happening. The form of the apocalypse is an alien invasion. So you spend an hour and 10 minutes, or however long it is, the vast majority of the runtime in a very realistic, psychological, Hitchcockian thriller, and then at the end, you have a little alien invasion movie tacked onto it.
Right.
Now, that understandably, I think, alienated, so to speak, a lot of the audience. I thought, and you agreed, that it was a very smart and fun choice by the filmmakers that I really respected them for. So I wondered if perhaps calling this movie Cloverfield and having those aliens at the end might not have been a way to tie a very good little thriller that they had into a larger franchise. Mm-hmm. So what did you find out in your research?
Well, my theory originally about it was that Cloverfield was successful and they were just kind of waiting around for a good story to emerge. They just had, JJ probably read thousands of scripts on different takes of Cloverfield.
How are we going to make how are we going to make a sequel to Cloverfield?
And this was the one that they liked. So that was part of the story from the very beginning.
Okay.
It was.
So it is
a Cloverfield.
It was always intended to be some kind of a tie-in to Cloverfield.
Well, I'm going by what JJ's word, so I mean, take that for what it is.
Well, if it's on the internet, it's got to be true. But I've learned one thing.
It's just yes. No, I think it naturally feels like it's part of the story. It doesn't feel like it was shoehorned in to be part of it.
Yep.
They know what they're doing. Like the great moment when she walks out and she finally gets out of the bunker and she sees that there's an alien invasion happening. She's like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me!" Mm-hmm. It's like, this is a cool universe that this exists in. So, imagine the original Cloverfield story. This side story was going on at the same time, basically.
Yeah.
But something really weird is going on at the same time.
Sure, as it would be.
Something unrelated.
As it would be, right? People are still living their lives and everyone's got their own little internal dramas. Yeah, I like that. Okay, let me say a couple things. I really like this ending, too. I think there's a couple ways that you can look at it. I'm glad it was conceived as a Cloverfield sequel. I think that's cool, or a tie-in or whatever. I think you can look at this as a really well-constructed, realistic thriller with aliens at the end. Yes. In which case you might resent the aliens. But I'm a Godzilla fan. I'm a Cloverfield fan. I think you can also look at it as a monster movie. And if you examine it through the lens of a monster movie, how cool is it that we get this really well acted, kind of edge of your seat thriller, and it's still a monster movie. It can be all of those things. I talked about in Star Wars how when J.J. Abrams surprises you, it's exactly how you expect to be surprised, right? He follows the emotional arc that you expect, even intuitively, even if you don't rationalize it out. You expect to feel those feelings at this point in the runtime, at this point in the runtime. The end of 10 Cloverfield Lane pulls that rug out from under you. This is a movie that really actually surprises you. And I know people are saying, I knew it was aliens, I knew it was aliens. That's not what I'm talking about.
Doesn't matter.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about having an experience of film that you were not emotionally primed to have by the scenes that were there earlier. Now, that could be seen as a bad thing. I think it was a good thing. I will also say, though, that I have talked to some very, very, very smart people about movies whose opinions I respect that did not like the ending. So I've heard people say that, okay, it's one thing that it's aliens at the end, but why did they have to have this little she fights the alien sequence and she throws a bomb into the alien's mouth? Why'd they have to keep going? Couldn't it just been aliens and then cut to credits? Do you think that would have been a better choice?
No,
done that?
It's not your movie. That's such a stupid.
That's why people don't like you.
It's
Jordan.
such a stupid, ridiculous argument.
No, I think there's some validity to it, but here's why I don't agree with that. First of all, I don't. Who the fuck cares about? I fucking hate twist endings. The whole time it was really this surprise. Enjoy your dinner afterwards, or whatever. It's no. It's fuck the twist ending. It's okay, there's a twist, but by spending a little bit of time with the aliens and actually going full on into that other genre, it showed a real confidence in their having made that choice to put aliens in the movie, and it kept it from being more than just a twist. Now, you might think it's stupid or not to have aliens in there. That's fine. I think either opinion is valid. But I think you do have to respect that they didn't just throw it in as like a surprise twist that was supposed to change everything you knew
that's what I feel
about
like,
what
like
went
it
before.
naturally fit into it. And
and it wasn't meant to like upset or upend or recast any of the previous scenes.
No, that was like...
It's just like was a further coloring of the world.
It's the epilogue.
Yeah.
You know, it's like...
and it was
just
fun.
part of the story.
And it was fun. I mean, like when she like turned that corner at the intersection at the end and decided to go fight the aliens as part of the resistance. I mean, that's big, goofy movie stuff, but I felt great after watching that movie. Like, I loved it from opening scene to end. I thought every choice they made in that movie was the right choice.
Yes. Well, I've been listening to like a bunch of interviews with I forgot his name now, Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg.
Oh yeah.
About how they write movies, which is a really interesting way that they do it. And they always say like they try to make movies like a Trojan horse, or they make it about something that they actually want to say, but they kind of hide it in a zombie movie. And I think they're like the guys that know how to do it. And I think like that's how you always find great performances. Like, how do you think like fans would react to a Roger Corman movie being released, like a 70s Roger Corman, like a Death Race 2000 movie coming out in theaters nowadays?
Right.
Like, can you picture fans on the internet seriously trying to critically evaluate it? Like,
right.
Oh, there are so many mistakes in this, and I saw the boom mic, and I saw this and that.
Right.
But like, you can, if you actually pay attention to all these movies, like across the board, what stands out are the exact same things across the board. Everything. That's how you find really good acting. Like, like I can tell Harrison Ford is a great actor because he was showcased in this movie. Was the purpose of the movie to show Harrison Ford? No, but it allowed him to be in it.
Right.
Like,
and was it the kind of movie that was...
point across.
Yeah, and was it the kind of movie that was built to showcase actors so they can win Academy Awards? No. But that's where you find a lot of the best performances. But people have trouble recognizing that, I think. So we're here to help them out.
Yes.
All right. Well, I want this episode to be mostly Star Wars, and I don't want to go on and on and on and on unless
now let's talk about Star Trek.
No. Unless there's something you really want to say more about 10 Cloverfield Lane, I think we can wrap it up.
No. I like John Goodman a lot too.
John Goodman, great. And this movie is definitely worth checking out.
Now, see, why couldn't he win an Academy Award for this? Like, it's just not going to...
Because it has aliens.
The fact that you know it can happen is kind of depressing.
Yeah, it's a problem.
So let's end on a depressing...
Let's end on a depressing note. So I think the takeaway is Jordan and I hate a lot of things.
Yes.
And a lot of people and a lot of pop cultural trends going on right now. But we liked Star Wars.
Yes.
We liked 10 Cloverfield Lane.
I'm going to go out and say that I love Star Wars.
Cool, man. So if you have been waiting for this internet video to tell you if you should go see Star Wars or not, you have our permission. Check out Star Wars Episode 7 of The Force Awakens, and also check out 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yes.
That one needs a little boost from us. So, all right, cool. Well, this was a really fun episode. I was excited to get your take. This is like live because I got it like we hadn't talked about it beforehand, so it's really
valuable
fun.
Opinion.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it because I did too. We might have had a brawl on our hands here otherwise. Okay, so that's all we've got for this one. Thanks for sticking with us. If you've stuck with us this long, I hope you guys enjoyed it and got something out of it. Well, I would love to hear what other people liked or didn't like about either of these movies. So let us know in the comments, and we'll be back soon with another episode of Brain Says Strange Things. Until then, goodbye.